Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Word from Tomorrow podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Keith Lettinen.
Hello, everybody.
Keith, how we doing today?
This is a heavy, heavy volume we're going to be talking about. Yeah. Spoiler alert, it's probably my favorite volume of the run.
It's a good volume. I think I'm going to save my thoughts on like favorite story arcs until we get to the end of the series.
Right.
But it is a very fun story. I've been waiting for you to get to this one.
I love it.
It's great, and to have a conversation about Transmetropolitan Volume 8 Dirge, we are joined by Alan Kistler.
Hello, people of Earth.
Alan, it's great to get you on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Like I was this was such an impactful series for me when I was young, and I've reread it at least half a dozen times. It's one of those things where sometimes I'll go back and I just want to read one passage or one issue of something and just, oh yeah, there was that great like short story. Like let me, and then inevitably I'm like, I mean, as long as I'm here, I guess I could read the next 20 issues that follow it. Like, and it just, it's just, it keeps drawing me back in. Now, and also a sad way of how sadly, like it was sort of remarking on certain things at the time, and sadly, those things have worked in a cycle, like a terrible George Lucas saga. We just keep rhyming tragedies.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about the series because it felt prescient and it felt relevant to our discussion, even though there are certainly it's not a one-to-one comparison with the modern world.
No,
But
no, but minus a few assumptions it makes about technology, you could tell someone this was written 2 years ago,
Yeah.
or
yeah,
during a guy's first administration, and a lot of people would be
Okay.
like, a lot of people would be like, oh, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. And as we've said, a couple times before, it's cyberpunk. You know what I mean? It's a cyberpunk story. It's got a tone to it. And yeah, I definitely got the cyberpunk, not the aesthetic of cyberpunk as much in this volume, but I got the tone in this volume. I'm like, yeah, this is a cyberpunk story. If you played Cyberpunk 2077, there's not a good ending. Like, and that's interesting. So,
yeah, and we're starting to get some of those details about that as we dig into
mm.
this story. But Alan, for the listeners at home, who are you and what's your association with Transmetropolitan?
In general, I'm just a writer, an occasional director. I have, for the past 3.5 years, worked at Darkburn Creative as a creative producer and an assistant art director. And basically, that means that I spent the last 3 years directing, producing, helping with choreography, and sometimes scripting and plotting out preview trailers for video games, such as Lego Batman, Legacy of the Dark Knight, Deadpool VR, Batman Arkham Shadow, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Dragon Age The Veilguard, a few others. And part of that, why I have that job, is that I'm familiar with the lore of those worlds, and that I have studied fan reactions and commercial reactions to things that have happened with those characters and those worlds over the years, which is something I did before I was at Darkburn. I spent several years being a sort of entertainment journalist who moonlighted as a comic book and pop culture historian, focusing on US and UK science fiction and science fantasy stories. And yeah, like ever since like before you and I met in high school, like I was always fascinated by the stories behind the stories, and the clockwork of, well, when Captain America found this guy, this terrorist who then turned out to be a White House official, maybe the president. What was that reacting to? Oh, there was a thing called Vietnam and Watergate and the Korean War, like all this stuff. I was always fascinated by like what world events are influencing the stories, and then also what the individual authors, writers, plotters, artists, editors were bringing in, either from a personal experience or just because they wanted to see the character in a new light. We all are familiar now, even if you don't read comics, many people out there are familiar just from media, that there are different interpretations of Batman, different interpretations of Superman. How his adopted father dies, or whether he stays alive, can like really influence what kind of symbolism you're giving to the character. And then of course there's the wider stuff that's always interested me, like what it says about especially superhero characters, or in this case, a character who's questioning the system. I love those stories where the system is questioned, and whether we're saying, cops are great but need help, or cops are part of a system that, even if they have good intentions, is flawed and at times just full out corrupt and looking at the wrong people. I'm always down with stories of social justice and truth seeking, and not just being a marketing ploy.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, Transmetropolitan, that started when I was in high school, and initially I was jumping onto it just because the art was so sharp, and I was always into that dystopia future cyberpunk kind of style of storytelling. I had enjoyed Marvel 2099, which also sadly seems prescient in some ways now.
Hmm.
And so Transmetropolitan, initially that was it. And then I just got really into this writing. I was only vaguely familiar with Hunter S. Thompson at the time, but through Transmetropolitan, I then, because you have conversations with other people at comic book shops and all about like what the story reminds you of or who it feels like. And Hunter S. Thompson came up, and then I wound up reading a bunch of Hunter S. Thompson and getting very into that gonzo journalism and that unapologetic personality in his words, but that the personality doesn't negate there's a truth he's speaking to. And that struggle throughout this series that Spider has of, when I'm telling you the problems, I don't just want you to be angry. I'm telling you we have to do something, but also don't look to me to be the guy that does something. That sort of that sort of arc of, I can do a lot of stuff, but I also want to inspire you that you can all do stuff, was so appealing to me because of classic superhero tropes like Superman. That's the classic must there be a Superman thing.
Hmm.
And like Spider-Man, like, when is responsibility just an insane obsession? Like, how much do you want to take on, and how much do you need other people to realize they need to do a thing and they have the tools to do that? So I just loved it, and I thought it was great. At the time, I thought it was a great sort of callback to, especially we'd come out of Reagan and Thatcher and Glasnost with the Soviet Union. There were parts of this that felt to me like Chernobyl and Stonewall riot, and analogies and allegories rather. And so I thought it was a great like look back on that of like, yeah, we can't do that again. And now I look at it differently of like, and we sort of did some of
We
these
sort
things
of
again.
whoopsie.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Cool. I guess we're here now. And I'm always just a sucker for clever dialogue and cleverly written threats. And Warren Ellis definitely
If nothing else.
has a career between this and Planetary. Holy crap! Some of the like one sentence, two sentence threats people make to people, like, are just amazing that the human mind thought of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're on, and I'm so glad we're talking about this series because it is without a doubt a series that I would not have come to if we had not been friends in high school. Because you
Mm.
turned me on to Planetary, which is actually my first area where Warren Ellis was a writer that I processed I was into, as opposed to like,
Right.
he was writing a lot of stuff, and I certainly read books that he had worked on, like his Excalibur run, for example. I know I have every issue of that, but
Sure.
I wasn't paying attention to him as a writer at the time. Planetary is one where I hopped on and I was like, oh yeah, definitely, I really dig this book, and somewhere in that process, I don't know if we ever really talked about Transmet in the day because I was really reading it my junior and senior year after you had graduated. But I definitely
I
wouldn't.
definitely I definitely had those books around in my back in high school, because I remember specifically like sitting in the auditorium or in the theater, like reading Transmet books along with my Planetary books and such. So I definitely would have had it around. So it might have come up in casual conversation, and or just like me showing some of the artwork or stuff, even if you didn't jump into it until later.
Yeah, I don't really remember that specifically. Like I remember like Wizard magazine showing off a bunch of the Frank Quitely covers, which are like the first couple issues of the series.
Mm, hmm.
And so that was like my first exposure to it from a design standpoint because I was like, what the hell is this character? And I have distinct memories of introducing Mr. Lewis, my religion teacher from high school, to it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And he was the one who actually turned me on to Hunter S. Thompson because I had no idea who Hunter S. Thompson was when I got into it. And he was like, "Oh, it's clearly based on this character."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember talking to Mr. Lewis also about comics, and we would have similar discussions where we would talk about this issue of Planetary where they were making sort of references to 80s Vertigo characters, 90s Vertigo characters, and like 80s horror and mystic type characters. But then also there was dialogue that was clearly a dig at Margaret Thatcher and a dig at her administration. And yeah, I mean that was always the great thing of there's the popcorn comic books that were just fun and great, and like yeah, why let's watch Mr. Fantastic discover that there's a hidden dimension inside a wooden door, and then like a crazy man stick his hand in it, and then they go into another adventure. Like let's watch that, but then let's also look at Planetary and Transmetropolitan and really talk about what have we learned from politics and from the narratives we try to shape around politics.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this series. It was eye-opening to me about politics, and I think it's just, like we said, it rhymes with a lot of the things in the modern era, but at the same time, if your eyes haven't been opened to it, it is a really great way to introduce people to it all with the under the pretense of here's a crazy cyberpunk fantasy.
Yeah. There's even a cover in this volume that's just like, hey, does this look familiar? Like, and I'm like, we'll get to that. But yeah, I'm just like, oh, that's kind of happening right now. Great. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Keith, we have been going through this now. We're 7 volumes deep. We're on volume 8. Where for the listeners at home, where are our intrepid heroes?
Yes. So, quick recap for those who, for some reason, are listening to episode 8 and none of the others. Spider Jerusalem is a journalist in the city in the distant future and is at the moment opposed to the president who he unfortunately partially helped get elected, technically, and now is using his powers of journalism and wit and cartoonish violence to take the president down accompanied by his filthy assistants, who are the best characters in the book, Shannon and Yelena. He, in the last volume we read, basically, I termed it as they were at their lowest point because they lost their network, they lost their voice essentially, and the last volume was half them getting a new voice, and then half some of the most polarizing issues in this book series, which was really interesting to go over last week. Um, but none of which I think would really apply to my recap at this point because they were really good, like side stories that don't need to be the main story. But now we are taking up where Spider's back on his feet. He's not in his lofty penthouse or anything like that, but he is ready to take the fight back to the president. So,
The journalists are on the run, and now we've gotten the new status quo in the last volume, is what we said, and now we are ready to see them push back beyond just announcing that they were ready to push back. Uh,
yeah. And
uh,
it's a ride.
it,
When we get into it, it's a ride. That's one of the reasons I love this volume. So much happens. So yeah,
Yeah, so let's dig in. So we open with the Dirge arc, which is 3 issues. As we've noticed, most of these 6 issue arcs in the or collections, the volumes that they collected it in on the DC app and in print, typically are 6 issues, but for the most part, they're made up of chunks of 3 issues and either multiple 2 3 issue arcs or 3 issues plus 3 1 shots. And last volume was the 3 in 1 and a bunch of 1 shots situation. This one opens with Dirge, the title arc of the series or of this particular volume, I should say. And we open with the continuation of our running theme of Yelena turning into Spider.
which I've been dreading for a while, dreading and loving, like because like I love her, but also she's better than Spider. So yeah,
Yeah, so Yelena wakes up in a disgusting hotel room with it appears to be men's socks next to her face. So, like, there's an ongoing question of is the one fling that we saw just just a one-time thing, or has that continued?
I assume they're so broke they have to sleep next to each other. That's my thought.
For sure.
So, like, I hope it's not like a sex thing still.
Yeah, well,
I don't think Shannon would put up with that.
no, she probably wouldn't.
She would tease the fuck out of her. So,
But we know that Yelena is woefully addicted to cigarettes, even though she only started smoking because Spider told her she had to as his assistant. Um, she wakes up, smokes a cigarette, goes out and looks out at the city, says "Morning City," and we see a spider tattoo on her butt.
he marked her.
And then we cut across the city and we see a couple like cityscape shots. We note that Cambodia is on fire because, well, Dr. X threatens Earth is what it says there.
I like that Dr. X threatens Earth. It's just like, we're gonna go past that.
Right. It's just like here's just a little aside. As we've noticed in the series, there's a lot of details that will get dropped about the outside world that they don't spend any time on.
Yeah.
Like the Australian Civil War. We had one panel and then we move on.
Yeah. It makes it a living world that we don't have to see every aspect of. We know that as dungeon masters, right? Like
Yeah.
you throw a plot hook in there that is designed to go nowhere, and then that's what the party goes after, of course. But yeah, like it makes it a living world, a bigger world. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And we
also
cut.
to me,
Oh,
it's a nice reminder. No problem. Like I was gonna say, like to me, it's a nice reminder of also just like I said that there's a wider world. Like the city is not the world. The city is the city. Whatever is passing for the U.S. right now is the
Mhm.
U.S. But there are other things happening, and so when things are threatening Spider, it's not always about um, the world. He's not like necessarily saving the planet from Doctor Doom. It's his life might be at stake, his city might be at stake,
Yeah.
and that's still okay because we care about them. It's like with I wish more superhero movies remembered that where Dread I thought did a great job of just the main thing here is Dread might die and Anderson might die. It's not the city might be destroyed. The city is going to be fine. The city is going to do what it does. But
Yeah.
I like Dread and Anderson, and they might die. And it
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be like a huge world-shattering event.
Yeah. One of the things I point out specifically in the last volume is I think the city is the only thing Spider loves, like really loves. And that's the love of his life basically. And so that's why I point out like he always looks out over the city when he writes, or like the president coming after him comes after the city. You know what I mean? Like, and so he knows how to get to Spider. And so yeah, no, that just kind of reinforces it. Like there's the other world, the rest of the world, things are happening out there. We're focused on the city because that's what Spider's focused on.
he loves it even though he hates it here.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's real enemies to lovers
It's
situation.
it's a very creative thing, or by creative I mean being a creative, right? Like
Oh
so,
yeah.
sometimes like the thing that inspires you the most is the thing you just hate.
Yeah.
Like you
Well,
just
Any
hate so much.
complacency is such a trap. Like
Yeah.
comfort can just completely strip you of the energy to do anything.
Yeah.
and any writer has conflicted feelings about home.
Mhm.
Look at any also particularly in just my experience, like the Irish writers.
I was gonna say James
The
Joyce was the first one that popped in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Like New York writers, certain South American writers. I'm half Peruvian, and I know that like being Peruvian, having a mother who immigrated from Peru, there is this mix of pride of all these things happened and we're still here, and like genocides happened even more recently, like in the 90s, and we're still here, and also like and there have been like 7 coups in the past 10 years and
Yeah.
like there's a lot of like other crap, and like it's a very conflicted feeling that doesn't feel also like the anger you have towards the city, the home, doesn't feel like it negates the love. It's just like I'm angry because I love you because I know you could be better.
Yeah, totally. And what we are seeing here is that this home that angers Spider so much, but that he also loves, is immediately threatened by a gunman who we see or say Morning City, same as Elena, and then activates a blur suit, which we've established in the last arc quite a bit. And then he just starts sniping people, and this was a lot. Darick Robertson is a great artist and great at showing the grotesquerie of the world, especially when people are gunned down in senseless violence. Sets up just a grim scene, and the sniper says it's going to be a lovely day.
Using the fixed point of view for this montage was really well done to show how like a scene like that can fall apart, you know. I really I don't want to say I enjoyed that. I will say that I was staring at each and every one of these and be like, do I know that person? Oh God, do I know that? Because
Hmm.
this dude's or someone has been basically taking out people that we know. Not necessarily the best people, but people that we know, you know. And so I'm looking at this like, oh fuck. So I saw blonde hair. I'm like, Shannon, no. Fucking no, it's not her. Okay, it's good. So yeah, or pink hair. I'm colorblind. But yeah. So I'll tell you, I was worried about Royce in this scene, is what I'll be clear about. I was
Yeah.
like, it's gonna be him.
Well, you're
So
not the only one worried about Royce
yeah.
throughout the events here. So,
Yeah.
um, so we cut to Spider. He is reeling from something. He's been having difficulties up until this point that we haven't really gone into, but like he's been having nosebleeds. He's been having flashback or not flashbacks. He's been having like blackouts, and it is just not doing as well as he had been at the start of the series. And so the assistants say that they're going downstairs, and he says he'll meet them in a minute. And he catches a bit of news. So he catches that there is a flu epidemic breaking out in the police department, which is going to matter a bit later. And then he catches news about the sniper. And so he grabs his gear and runs downstairs to the assistants to insist that they need to get to the scene of this. And they hail a cab, and then we cut over to the sniper and a it's some kind of police helicopter rolls in to try to deal with it and fails miserably. This guy is extremely well armed and is able to shoot down a police helicopter with little difficulty. And we get a lot of big explosive violence while that occurs. And Spider is watching all this on the news and they notes that this is weird. One helicopter is not enough. Like, where's the backup on this whole thing? Realizing that something's weird, he insists that the cab driver pull over, who says, please don't kill me and eat me. I couldn't bear to be killed and eaten again." Just one of those Warren Ellis kind of lines right there.
It's great because this volume specifically has very little of that compared to a lot of the volumes. Like there's not a lot of the wacky in this one because
Right.
shit's serious now. And so it was nice to throw it in right at the beginning, get a little laugh, you know, and then move on. So
Yeah, it's definitely a tonal shift from where we were, say, in volume two, which is just Bugs Bunny.
yeah, yeah, basically.
Yeah,
Running away from an angry dog. That's literally a Looney Tunes thing.
right.
Like
And his headless fake son.
it's so stupid, man. We've come so far.
Well, so they pull over, and it turns out that they're at Dante Street, which is where the riot occurred that they barely escaped with their lives from. They phone Royce to make sure that he's okay, and also confirm that he has information or has access to information so that they can get some stuff off of him while they're operating. And they try to figure out if this is blue flu, which is to say, if it is the police calling in sick as opposed to going on strike. And that'll get sort of explained as this goes. But meanwhile, Shannon looks up and notes that she really doesn't look or like the look of that sky, which we had already had Yelena say the same thing. We get repeated shots of characters just looking up at this like extremely dark sky that is coming in on them.
And yeah, it was a whirlwind first issue that goes by quick. And
Yeah,
it's just a lot going on. Again, a lot of serious plot progression.
and a
Eh,
lot of big action beats, which the series
yeah.
doesn't normally do. Like we have multi-page, like the fight with the helicopter is like 3 pages, and that's way more action than we normally see in the series.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
such a different atmosphere right off the bat because of that. And you have in that first 10 pages minimal dialogue. Like you have silent pages, silent in terms of just we're not being fed anything. And a couple pages that have dialogue, it's only a sentence in the entire page of like morning city, it's going to be a lovely day. And that's it. And that's such a shift in the tone. Like that immediately makes you feel like a storm's coming. Um, as opposed to even just the last story arcs where it was almost illustrated novels with there was so much prose happening to give you context and emotional conclusions about different people's stories and the lives intersecting the city, and then like ending with indications about Spider and all that stuff. Like this this whole Dirge 3-part arc, like it's fascinating to me how much it suddenly shuts up and providing the atmosphere, but also inviting us that it's our minds that are being asked to provide the screams and the sound of what's happening and the stillness of what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we don't get that trademark spider wit at all. Like, because I think he senses this is some real shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah. And it is sobering as an audience to be like, oh, like it's immediate signature, like there's some shit's going down. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, really, really interesting issue. I liked it quite a bit. Watching Elena, not just at the beginning, but throughout the issue, becoming more like Spider. Like the way she looks up at the sky, it's just this spider-like grimace. Like the way he's disgusted by everything he sees around him. It's the exact same face.
Yeah. Well, then the next issue opens with her saying, "I hate it here," and we get a little bit of a back and forth with Spider, who is like, "Where have I heard that before?" Side note, Alan, this is a question we've asked all of our guests. What is Spider's voice in your head?
It's shifted at times. At one point, it was Patrick Stewart.
Right.
Um, because like it was just when I heard about that delightful comparison that Patrick Stewart also liked the character, it's like, oh well, what a fascinating thing that would be. Over time, I think it very much shifted to be just more of a not Hunter S. Thompson. It's never been Hunter S. Thompson's voice to me, even though he is so clearly in the vein of Hunter S. Thompson. There was I don't know. There was a distinction to me where I couldn't ever hear Hunter's voice in there. I could hear more of a like Michael Keaton voice. And yeah, just that sort of like, especially in there's a movie called The Paper with Michael Keaton and Marissa Tomei and Randy Quaid and Glenn Close. It's a brilliant movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and it has to do with like a day in the life of a newspaper, like more of a not New York Times, but more of a New York Daily News type
Mm.
paper in New York when a couple of black teenagers just got arrested because basically they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you follow these guys, and it's one of those things where like Michael Keaton's character is so interesting, and he's constantly got this conflict of, is this a job or is this a calling? And do I want to take a job at a New York Times type place where I get to cover the world? Or is being a New Yorker, is like loving my city mean I stay with the smaller paper because, yeah, I'm not going to make as much money. The hours are worse. Like, but I know I can look at this perspective and bring this perspective to light. And also just there's this frustration at times of knowing even if he feels all this stuff, it is a business. And there are some great moments of that, and just his whole portrayal in that, I'll often hear like that Michael Keaton voice of like telling Randy Quaid, like, what are you doing to me? You talk to the guy, you don't talk to the commissioner, you talk to the cops, you talk to the little guy. What are we
Mm.
doing here?
Yeah.
Or telling some other guy like who's telling him, you're giving up a chance to like cover the world. Like, I don't live in the fucking world. I live in New York fucking city. So go fuck yourself. Like it's that kind of like attitude that I just, for me, like very vibed very heavily with Spider.
Yeah. Voice wise, I always say that because again, I'm reading for the first time, and I immediately read that they, besides Patrick Stewart, they wanted Tim Roth to play him, so it's Tim Roth in my head.
I could easily see Tim Roth,
Yeah.
like, especially like after seeing him in things like Lie to Me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that would be a great casting choice.
Yeah.
I always hear like a bit of a grizzle in his voice, both from oh, you know who also I sometimes heard him as actually is Mark Maron,
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
comedian Mark Maron,
I 100% see that.
um,
Yeah.
who I've gotten to see live several times. Living in LA is it's one of the benefits, frankly.
He's great.
Um, I met him one time very briefly. Such a great guy. But yeah, it's again because to me, like Michael Keaton's character from the paper, when Mark Maron has done his podcast or has been real with you, there is both that romantic hope of we can get out of this, right? But also that like grizzled fear from too many cigarettes in the past and damage we do or don't know about in the past that's like broken him down a little bit of like, I don't know if we can get out of this. and, and that just informs that to me.
Yeah, the thing that we keep coming back to is because of the quirks of Ellis's writing, there is this element of a British person pretending to be American in there that
Right.
like uh that one keeps coming back to me in my head where something like one that we mentioned a few episodes back that I've been like circling back around to in my head is Ewan McGregor uh
I was
doing an
thinking,
American
Hmm.
accent
Okay.
yeah, I
would be
was think
really
Okay.
interesting.
I was thinking of oh God, the movie where he's a drug addict. Why do I
Train
not
spotting.
remember?
Train spotting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of Train Spotting. I was like, yeah, like he's got that like jittery, like like
You,
like I'm like, fuck yeah.
I would do it half just to watch some people be disturbed by it. Is I would have David Tennant
Oh
like
my God.
shave his head and do the American voice he did for the
Jessica
um
Jones.
not for Jessica Jones, although that was good, but like he also had a slightly different voice he did in I think it was called Grace Point. It was the American version of the British crime drama he was in right after Doctor Who.
I remember that, yeah.
Um, and it was not great. It's a fascinating look at like how different directors and editors can take the
Adapt
same
stuff.
script
Yeah.
and it just doesn't work as well. Um, but I think David Tennant would be fun to like have that. But you're absolutely right, Case. Like there are constantly little reminders of this is not an American from Chicago or New York talking about certain things. This is a British person talking about almost a symbolic city that America has come to mean in like pop culture. And I think that sometimes when I'm reading older stories with Judge Dredd, of like this
Mhm.
is not an American Western put in a cyberpunk world. This is a British person's reaction to American Westerns, both loving and satirizing it as he puts it in this weird post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you that question because we've asked every guest about that, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's good.
Michael Keaton and Mark Maron.
Yeah,
That's gonna be my
those are
final
good, and
answers.
those are new ones. No one else has said those yet. So I like it. But speaking of Spider's voice, he reaches out to Kay to find out what's going on. So she's one of the two running the Hole, their new feed site, and because the Hole is a pirate. I mean, it's like a pirate radio kind of analog, like
Yeah.
using web terminology, but like the conception of how things worked just wasn't quite there yet. And uh, like, but she's a good hacker is the ultimate point on this one.
It
She's able to find out information about things.
it's like a good Drudge report to put it in the '90s context, like where
Okay.
they're just like, oh, this is not the CNN website, but it's like this other website that like is like a little engine that could just seems to like find interesting facts.
Yeah, and so Spider asks if she's able to, or actually doesn't ask, he just knows that she's able to find a police officer who is probably not homesick at the moment. And he says he wants to find Detective Newton, the woman who they tangled with during the Dante Street riots. And the fact that they're at Dante Street means that they're actually close to her precinct. And so they confirm that she's there, and he calls her initially and then gets her to agree to meet outside. We cut back to the sniper, who is still just blowing people's brains out, just doing horrible violence on the street. And it starts to rain. And Newton meets up with Spider and the assistants and confirms that it is blue flu. That from on high, possibly even the mayor's office, it was suggested that the police officers stay home because they don't need to get caught in the line of fire, clearly indicating that the sniper is working with the government of some kind in this whole situation, which makes sense.
In the middle of this, the shooter's still killing people too,
Yes.
including this really just this page, this devastating page where it's just like a slow mo. This guy just looking up at a bullet and going straight through his face. I was like, holy fuck! Like it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, again, just Darick Robertson is doing a great job in terms of conveying the horror of this kind of violence, which is great because again, we've also talked about how sometimes it's just like Bugs Bunny levels of violence. So like it contains multitudes. Newton explains that she is a cop, and so she's not going to call in sick for a situation like this. And Spider is incredulous at this. Like we get a really nice beat panel there when she responds that it's because she's a cop. Spider starts talking out things, at which point he notes that all the newspapers and all the TV stations are based in the print district, which is where the sniper is located, and that everyone has been cleared out of there. And at which point they all kind of start to process that there's no eyes on the city because Newton has confirmed that there are too many cops out of work right now to be monitoring the various camera feeds that are going on, and with all the journalists evacuated from their base of operations, no one is watching anything. So they start wondering like what is not being covered right now, like what is not available. Um, and the rain starts getting heavier.
Yeah, not ominous at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think did they change up the detective's design a bit? She's a little more Amanda Waller, I think.
I'd have to compare, but not in a way that struck me.
Yeah,
It's not like Yelena's dad, who has different facial hair every time he comes on screen.
yeah, exactly. I
I mean,
I want to ask you this, right? We get this shot of the clouds, right?
mhm.
Mm.
Is that a thing? There's a
That specific cloud there.
yeah,
The weird like circle in the middle that
yeah,
um, I took that as just cloud texture,
yeah.
but I don't think it's a thing. They do exist in a world where they have weather control. They've mentioned. Um, I don't- I don't think it's
You don't think it's like a fake cloud that's a weather machine or
right.
something?
I feel like we
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
have had more
yeah.
attention to it if it
Okay.
was.
Well,
I
because
agree.
you
It would
know
have
the
been.
ending of the book, so it might have come up later, so that's why I asked. So
Oh yeah.
I don't know that it's not a real storm. Like I don't know if
yeah,
that it's outside of the realm of possibility that this was man-made situation that the
yeah.
president has inflicted on them. I don't think that there's any evidence that that specific cloud
Mhm.
is the thing. Is I guess
Yeah.
where I'm going. I do
Yeah.
like that we see people getting off the street and we see the kids from the last volume.
Yeah. I do like seeing them um temporarily.
Yeah.
Hope they're
I
okay.
I mean the idea of the blue flu being weaponized by the system is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because blue flu, like the term really originated in '69 um, in Massachusetts, where just there was a lot of complaints about increasingly unforgiving hours, no sick time, uh, certain times like to be kept late but not paid overtime. They and like the cops tried to organize a union and they weren't recognized as having a union. And finally, they called out 65% of the workforce called out. So it was 1,500 out of 2,300 police called in sick. And the governor spoke against it and called in the National Guard. And Ronald Reagan, being California governor at the time, said there is no right to strike against public safety. And reports came out there was all this increasing violence and crime. Later historians pointed out like that actually seems to be fairly exaggerated, but it became like known as the blue flu, and over time, like that became a term of when police don't see any other way to because in some states also they're not allowed to strike. Like if they don't see any other recourse, then you all call in sick, or enough of you call in sick to just send a message to the city itself. It sometimes worked against them. There's been the Kansas City Preventative Patrol experiment in the '70s, and other experiments have indicated that it doesn't affect the city. It actually sometimes proves that you don't need as many police in a city
What a
because
shock.
of yeah. And so there's been significant evidence on that side as well. It happened again in New York not too long ago, um, where they had similar evidence there. So it's that kind of thing. And then, but to hear that it's the government indicating you should have a blue flu day is another great to me like symbol of this is something that whether it's a good idea or not originated from a workforce saying the government isn't listening to us. We have to do something to make them listen. And here, the Smiler and his crew are once again corrupting something of the people for their own means, and using it as a way to actually do to herd certain people where they need them to be, and like to make a certain place not be looked at the right time.
So we see the downpour is getting worse. We see a lot of water starting to like wash in, and when we cut to a bar, they say still with the fucking reruns. There's no weather reports going on.
Ominous.
Which by the way is again one of those things that dates this series to me.
Yeah.
People complaining
Weather
there are no
Channel.
reruns. It's like, yeah, because none of us foresaw streaming of like what that would happen. Like, can you imagine right now, like anyone complaining about a lack of reruns? Like the people, one, it's not doesn't mean the same thing. Two, people watch reruns all the effing time. Like
Mhm.
that's all streaming is half the time, is people want to rewatch those 5 episodes of The Office again while they're like serving drinks at a bar. Like a friend of mine, like every time she's on her bar shift, Supernatural seasons 1 through 4 is going to be playing on the television. You're going to deal with it. It doesn't matter if you were here last week and saw that episode. Like we're going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a cute one of those things to me, one of those anachronisms of this series.
Oh, for sure. Also, like the democratization of media in the form of news. Like if this was going on, if my like weather app wasn't working on my phone, which again is very different from a weather report on a news broadcast.
Yeah.
I would be turning to Twitter. I would be turning to Blue Sky. I would be turning to
Yes.
Facebook. Like
Yeah.
social media covers so much of this.
Yeah.
Like the just the nature of media is so different,
Yeah.
and traps this work as a 20th century work of speculative fiction as opposed to a 21st century one. So they start to come together on the idea that okay, so no one's in the print district. This is bad, and there's probably something going on. Like we need to tell the story. Like we need to run. This is another spot where it's just like again the anachronisms of the technology, where it's like we need to run a special edition of the whole, where it's just like don't no, it's just a column that you're just posting. Like it's a website. Like you
Yeah.
don't have like a
Right.
morning news edition and an evening news
Yeah.
edition.
Yeah. It's interesting because it is like the emphasis is like we're the only ones here. We're the only ones who can tell this story. That's where the emphasis is, which the story gets twists later to like recontextualize what's going on.
So Spider tells Newton that this is deep background. He's not going to reveal who it is, but it is a source that they can use to reveal that it is Blue Flu, and that's what's going on.
Mm.
They get into a cab that they hail by way of Shannon flashing her boobs, which it's just a quota. You got to have at least like one boob shot per volume.
Didn't she have barcode
She did,
nipples?
yes,
Right,
she
but
did.
she was working then. She was working.
I
I
thought she had
so
them later too, though. Like I was kind of confused.
I mean, I sort of saw them as just as pasties.
That makes a
Uh,
lot more sense.
Yeah, I think the only time we saw them on her was in that first volume but then there's the TV movie based on their life where
right,
they
right.
call out
That's
specifically
right.
that she has barcodes on her boobs.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember that. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I could see like strippers with QR codes. So like that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. But no, of course, I mean, I wasn't unhappy with the idea.
It's like Shannon, think of your dignity.
Also,
Was
they talk overall they talk about our boobs a lot in this volume.
I noticed that too. There is a weird like which to me sometimes like so I'm of different minds about it. Sometimes just like yeah, sometimes like friends talk about that with each other, and sometimes it does feel like a guy saying like I bet this is what women talk about.
Yeah,
Like
because it's Yelena the entire time doing it.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I
It's not a
agree
big
with
deal
you.
to me.
Yeah, I agree
yeah,
with you. It's one of those things where I'm like, is it in character for Yelena? Yelena does it consistently enough where I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. Like so yeah, I don't know. But then they get the word while they're in the cab, get off the street now, and we just see a wide shot of the city with just these giant lightning bolts coming down.
yeah. And it's horrifying. Like it's just like you see it coming. You know what I mean? Like it's ominous. Again, I keep using ominous, but that's what I keep thinking. Like,
And that's the thing, like the pacing of the story and the pacing of silent panels and silent pages has been building this up, which is, I mean, to build up the sense of atmosphere that an oncoming storm has, and one that could be a disaster. To build that up using two-dimensional artwork with no sound effects, with no ambient music to provide the reader, is really remarkable. Like I have to hand it to both the script writing, I'm sure was sharp, but also just in the hands of a lesser artist, I don't think would have been as effective. I can think of a few artists, I won't name them, who would have not delivered the punch of this oncoming storm and a sense of alarm, also of isolation.
Mhm.
There's an increasing, we've gotten 40 issues of the city, like the noise, the like levels of humanity on top of humanity, and the crowds and the crowds and the crowds. And these issues keep building up an isolation of the quiet. There's no one here, not enough people are here. What's going on? Um, our government overlords seem to be absent. No one's minding the cameras. Like it's a very interesting mixture of elements that we've gotten used to in this world suddenly being pushed aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it certainly would be in the scene extremely loud between the gunshots and then now these like this huge
Yeah,
storm.
yeah,
Like we're seeing all this lightning. You know that there's like tons of thunder that's going on, and the storm itself is going to drown out any city noise or any yells. So uh, it, it makes me think of the scene in Road to Perdition when Paul Newman's character uh, meets his fate, and it's
sure.
an entirely silent scene, except but it's like bathed in rain, and you know that part of it is that like yeah, there's probably really loud noises, but you can't get a fix on it because there's this like combination of muffling and cacophony going on because of the storm you're in. So the next issue picks up with we see a giant ass wave that's carrying a boat into the city, and we see windows shattering as the storm goes on, people getting sliced up by broken glass as they're trying to get out of the storm, car windows and windshields breaking and getting flooded away, people falling off bridges because of the winds. It's really bad. We start to see blood on the streets, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like page after page of just wreckage. Uh,
It's it's 8 pages before we get any sound or dialogue
yeah.
Yeah.
provided to us. It's just 8 pages of impact, um, which is great because like we had that slow burn, not only like atmospherically in the first two issues of this story arc, but like they keep showing Spider's cigarette slowly burning down as
Mm.
he's figuring things out, and now bam, and just 8 pages of like impact, 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 impact.
It's interesting because we get a lot of violence in this book, and a lot of it's cartoonish. We talked about that. There's a lot of sudden violence too, but this is a montage of violence. We haven't gotten something like this yet. So it really kind of sinks in like this is a big deal. This is a turning point. It immediately, again, as someone who hasn't read the story before, immediately made me think, oh shit, this is a big fucking deal.
And so after the 8 pages of just destruction, we get our first line, which is Yelena saying, "I wouldn't send a dog out on a day like this," and Spider immediately responding, "I would," because Spider hates dogs.
Continuing the tradition of spider hating dogs. Also, the detective was eating dog when when she was at her desk. So that's two dog references. But yeah,
Yep.
why does Warren Ellis hate dogs?
Spider recounts that this is similar to the storms that he used to see back in the day. He says the big storms would have died out a good 5 years before you were born. Near superstorms is the technical term. Back then, the media called them ruin storms. This isn't even a near superstorm. Ruin storms could strip your skin off, and they figure that this bar probably has a back room that they can use to work. So he sends Yelena and Shannon to go sweet talk the bartender. Meanwhile, Spider is looking out the window, um, reflecting that who would have thought he'd see one of these again? And right when that happens, there is It looks like an explosion across the street, but or maybe a car blows up because we get a tire flying through the window. But the window bursts and Spider is knocked back with broken glass like ripping through him. We get a big scar running up his head right through the spider tattoo, and for the rest of the book, he'll have that spider tattoo will be bisected. Um,
Yeah. That was very, I mean, interesting. Symbolic. Little on the nose, but very symbolic.
yeah. And the assistants see Spider fall, and they rush to him, and because despite the fact that uh, they hate his guts, they still love him, just as we said. There's so much about that. Spider tries to get to his feet, and he says, "I'm okay," before his eyes roll back and he passes out. And they're able to get him into the back room. They put him on a pool table to try to work him over. And Shannon notes that he's more out of it than he should be for what just happened. Yelena brings a first aid kit, but she doesn't know shit about first aid. So Shannon, who is the better prepared for these kind of things person in the group, is going to deal with Spider. And
Streetwise.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and meanwhile, Yelena resolves to write the column that Spider can't.
Which is the moment, right? That's the moment she steps in,
Yeah,
like, and she's becoming Spider for all intents and purposes.
yeah, she
Very
breaks out
interesting.
this folding keyboard, which has a holographic display. It's so funny, like like they have so many keyboards that are the computer in this, and it's the exact opposite of how things went. Like not that there aren't things like it. There at CES this year, there was like this concept computer that people were showing off that was entirely built into the keyboard, and of course that's a callback to the Commodore 64. But it's just so funny because it's like, yeah, we'll have holograms, but we'll still need a keyboard instead of, yeah, we'll have computers that are all in the screen now and not need the keyboard. But yeah, she starts writing the column, and as she's working, Shannon is feeding her cigarettes, and we see them settle into it while Spider tries to recover, and we see more shots of devastation, and then we cut to the president. So his advisor, and this is an interesting spot because I can't tell if she's in a dress or a night or like a robe from the art here. He is definitely in a robe. And we know that he fucks around, so I wouldn't put it past him to be banging his advisor. Can't really tell for sure. But either way, he's smoking a cigar and is being briefed on the presence of the ruin storm that has shown up. They call it a ruin storm. Spider dismissed it as being not quite as powerful, but it's really hard to say because we don't have any like frame of reference in terms of the actual scale. They say ruin storm from here on out, so we can just call it a ruin storm. And they note that it's pretty catastrophic with the print district down and with the cops off the street. No one was there to like direct people away, and so the city has become a giant disaster zone. And the Smiler just takes out his cigar and says, "What wonderful timing."
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I thought, hey, this is planned, is because of how Spider was like, this hasn't happened since 5 years before you were born. And I'm like,
Right.
that's an insane amount of time. Like, you know what I mean? For it not to happen. I'm like, it's got to be planned. But then it doesn't seem like the president, I don't know. He's a fucking scumbag. Who knows?
Like to me, there was an interesting thing when I was rereading this. I didn't see it originally, but when I reread this, it pops up to me, and maybe it's coincidence, but it felt to me like a foreshadowing of things in the first chapter when it ends, and Shannon looks up and says, "Yeah, Christ, look at the sky." On the
Yeah.
side of the frame, there is a billboard that's saying, Channel Zero, make them listen.
Yeah.
And it does feel like that's when you come back to the president at the end, smiling about doing the job of like, yeah, like he's like, it's both a blackout because of what he's trying to do, but it's also a way of like getting a message to certain people, including Spider,
Yeah.
of what's going to happen. And it's which is an awful thing to just use a both the action itself, but also how much collateral damage is done as a part of it. It's like using a bazooka on a fly. It's
Yeah.
it's it's insane.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Keith, I don't disagree that it is very possible that this is
No, I mean, yeah, I'm just explaining my thought
manufactured.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, but the only question I have is if it was they took advantage of it or if they engineered it. Like because either way, it's exactly what the president wants.
This is essentially what we might call the hurricane heist
Yeah.
scenario, wherein there's a terrible movie called Hurricane Heist, where people plan a bank robbery, and then part of the plan is that they're waiting for the right hurricane to happen so that they can take advantage of it and make sure that everyone else is gone, but they don't die. It's a delightfully bad movie that if you have a couple of drinks and like good sarcastic friends, I would recommend you going to it. But it's always that insane thing of like you waited for the hurricane. It's like
Yeah.
that's what you did. But yeah, this could be that. This could easily be that there was a storm coming, and rather than take certain precautions or use their weather crap, whatever it does, to like mitigate it or lessen it. He just let it happen and then took advantage of the situation to do other terrible things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think it's actually more interesting to not tell us. You know what I mean? To hint at it and not
Yeah.
tell us, because it's like,
Yeah.
do I need to know for this guy to be more despicable? No, I already hate him. He's already the
Yeah.
worst
And
person on the planet.
that's the
You
thing
know?
with like every tyrant and
Yeah.
fascist we've taken down, there are still unanswered questions. There's still
Yeah.
things like, was this a means of opportunity or were you planning this from 3 years ago? Like, there's always
Yeah.
that, and you're never going to get a satisfactory answer because people don't just leave diaries explaining all their motivations and thought
Yeah.
processes.
All right, yeah. So moving on to the next issue, this picks up directly after the events, and it is opening from Spider's perspective inside his comatose body, and he sort of talks out the situation. He decides that he's in hell because he doesn't have cigarettes, and that makes that a pretty defining thing. Um, but after being kind of bummed out about the whole situation, particularly the lack of nicotine, he starts going through the details and tries to recall how he got into this position. And we get a shot of him being blasted through the window, and he notes that bullshit. I've been hit harder than that before. Uh, I've had people from Scotland thrown at me for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, that's great. I love
Yeah,
that. Another like Ellis, like we
Yeah.
just keep getting dicks against the Irish and the Scots and the
Yeah.
Welsh. It's
yeah.
just like, yeah,
But then he also recalls the nosebleeds and so forth, and we get a shot from
yeah,
the previous volume, and then he sort of works it out that he's not dead, that he's in some kind of coma, and while he's sort of working this all out, he actually starts getting like little bits of lines from the outside world where he hears someone saying, "Is it anything to do with his drug use? Could that have exacerbated it?" And then he wakes up with the line, "Drugs are good for me."
yeah. Just the line of the first line he hears is "It's degenerative"
Yep.
is just really well done. That's a really good moment. Like I was like, oh, considering we talked a lot about this in the last volume, and I had some theories, and let me just say, I was spot on with one of them. So, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. So he wakes up and he is being treated by a doctor, and they're in this like really huge, nice room. And Shannon and Elena are there. The doctor is not a fan of spiders and notes that it's her Hippocratic oath that prevents her from cutting the answer into his forebrain um, on whether or not she's a fan of his. Um, and Elena reveals that they are at her parents' house.
Yeah. And all the hardness is gone from her face. She's not Spider at this moment, which I thought was really good. Like she's just soft. She's just worried about him, you know.
So the doctor breaks it down. And Spider insists on the assistants being there so that they can hear the whole thing, which I think makes perfect sense. It feels like that they're already appraised of the situation, so it doesn't seem to really matter that much. And immediately after this issue, everyone is pretty much aware of what his diagnosis is. Um, so Spider has some kind of degenerative brain disease that is due to being exposed to infopollen.
Hmm. So one of my theories was with all the crazy shit he was doing, I thought it would be the cloning himself to go to California thing. I thought that might be it or something. But yeah, I thought it might be that, or he just has the disease. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. I'm really happy I predicted that. So yeah.
See, meanwhile, I thought that I had played the hand too hard because I was keeping track of how many times he was exposed to infopollen.
Oh, I didn't even clock that. Like, so.
I was afraid I'd blown it for you.
Oh no, no. I didn't think of the infopol. I really thought, well, he got his body cloned and like I was like, he does all the drugs in the world. Like yeah. And again, this is literally a tale out of 20 Cyberpunk 2077. You know what I mean? Like it's at best you're in pain the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like that's cyberpunk. So
She says that in 2% of the cases, like what he's experienced so far will be the worst of the symptoms, and that they're able to deal with it. She's already dealt with the blood pressure issues that were causing the nosebleeds and the blackouts. But in the other 98%, it is going to be just continual cognition loss. He's going to lose the ability to speak. He's going to lose the ability to write. And for Spider, that is consigning him to death.
yeah, what's the point, right? At that point for him.
He starts with such vulnerability in this scene once he's back to the real world, like that. I mean, we have just one page, one splash page of him in the bed in that big room. And it's always interesting, when certain artists do splash pages, like you've only got so many pages in a comic book. You've only got so much real estate.
Right.
So why throw away a page? And it works perfectly here because the point is like one, it's making you all pause and consider the whole picture, to consider each character's facial expressions and their place in the room and da da da. But also, like you're immediately coming back with like Spider is so small.
Yeah, you pull back,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's also a very clinical room. It's not a hospital,
Yes.
but evokes a hospital. Yeah.
I mean, immediately to my mind, it feels like hospice.
A
It
hospice,
feels
yeah,
feels
100%.
like the last stop where it's about there's a Spartan quality to it. So this is for a medical reason, but also we want you to be comfortable. We want you to feel safe and soft. And I just think it's again Darick Robertson dynamite storytelling in that silent moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much language being conveyed by facial expressions throughout this whole thing. The assistants looking on with concern for Spider's reaction when he actually gets the full diagnosis and he processes it, when he like looks down and then up, and that's when he decides that he's going to try to take some kind of action and have control over the things that he has control of, and says that he needs to write his column. But then it's revealed to him that he's been out for 4 days, and that story needed to be told then. And he's upset about this at first until Yelena reveals that she wrote the story.
And probably the sweetest moment of him in this entire series. I loved it. Like I was like, he's gonna yell at her. Like I was like, oh God. But yeah, and it's really great. And it also shows like she's slowly becoming him. And I think this shows he knows it and he trusts her.
It's
Like if
also
yeah, good.
like the to me it's also we want to underline at times that despite his claims of godhood and other things like that, he's putting on a performance for his amusement. He's actually not quite as arrogant as he likes. He is arrogant, but he's not as arrogant in certain ways as he likes to pull off. And like writing the column is less about it's my column, and because he actually doesn't want a certain degree of fame. He wasn't doesn't want a certain type of fame. It's more important that the column got out than whether he's the one who actually did it.
Yeah.
Because and then again that does go to the trust in Yelena and Shannon that he knows that they know his methods and they know what he wanted to focus on
Yeah.
and would have wanted to focus on. So yeah, it's to me it's both about like I wanted this done for the good of the city, and it's not my pride about could I have written this better or could I have written this sharper. Is this going to be like informative,
Yeah.
but one of my lesser columns that people point out later? I don't give a fuck about that. Like we got this out here.
Not only that, but like he doesn't even ask to read it. He just trusts what she wrote. Like that's
Yeah.
really interesting. I was like, he's like, oh, good. someone I trust did this. You know what I mean? And it goes back to like the last volume when he's hinting at, I think at the end of one of the issues, he says, am I going to be around long enough to basically finish this? And again, I'm not reading ahead. So I think like he's securing his legacy with these two. You know what I mean? Like, and she's stepping into that role and he's thankful for it. So, yeah. Because again, like you said, the city's always going to be there, right? The people, these individual people might not always be there, but if Spider leaves, maybe there's someone to take his spot, or maybe not. Maybe they could finish their work and they ride off into the sunset. Who knows? It's cyberpunk, probably not.
Uh,
Stop smiling. I see you, Case.
it's just fun. It's just fun knowing how this goes.
Yeah.
So Yelena did the work of the assistant. She wrote the story for Spider. Meanwhile, Shannon did the work of the bodyguard. She's moved all of their effects to Mr. Rossini's house, and says that they are secure. And meanwhile, pulls out a new pair of Spider's glasses. Uh, and gives it to him. And it's another very touching moment between them. And it shows like Shannon's always been the one to keep track of things like the fact that his camera needs to have the images offloaded to a computer. Like she's always done that kind of work, which is different from the kind of work that Elena has done. And it's nice that they each of these are different ways that they relate with Spider. And then she starts to kind of break down about Spider having this diagnosis, and he tries to cheer her up a little bit, and he tries to put a positive spin. He's like, "We've got work to be done," and Elena's really excited about this whole thing. Meanwhile, Shannon's like, Spider, what are you going to do? You might not be able to write a year from now or anything. And he responds with, so we've got a deadline. We can do deadlines.
Journalist to the end, right? Like, get the work done.
So the next issue picks up with the Smiler in the city. And we get sort of a breakdown of what has happened since the Ruinstorm, since we didn't actually see the fallout of it all. This is now us seeing just like the degree of damage that's going on there, and noting that the Smiler is in town to oversee the reconstruction, or whatever you would call it, uh, the response.
I will point out this is the cover I was talking about, where the Smiler wants his face on the dollar bill. I'm like, that sounds familiar. Like, that sounds like an egotistical thing you would stick your name on something for no reason whatsoever.
Hmm.
Hmm. No comparisons in modern culture.
No, none whatsoever. No. And then Spider, as he's like watching TV, and we get this great shot of him in this giant plush, comfy chair, smoking a cigarette and stroking his cat, who's also smoking a cigarette. And Spider with mismatched
I was going to
slippers
say
and so
with
forth.
mismatched uh, slippers. I love
Yeah.
that.
He gets interrupted by Yelena's father, who comes in, and yeah. So, like I mentioned, he has different facial hair every time we fucking see him. It's
Ugh.
so wild,
The shaved head with the tiny braid in the back is the choice, and I love it.
right? But I like Yelena's dad a lot. He is really fucking cool. Like Shannon sized him up right. He's pretty dope.
He probably doesn't know spider stuff with you later.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
But but it is fun where he has this very understanding nature about his daughter, where it's like she's a great person, except she was an awkward bitch. I love it. It's like, yeah, she's got a good heart, but sadly it pumps poison instead of blood.
It's kind of interesting. This is one of the few times where we see Spider talk to somebody that either A, he's not like friends with, like Royce, or B, isn't a subject of a story and just has a conversation. We
Yeah.
don't have that very often. Like, and it's a really respectful conversation, even though this guy does, a job that Spider probably looks down on because of what he does. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think it's really interesting to see him, like, probably because he's enjoying his hospitality, like specifically, like his retort is literally just, like, what do you want to talk about? Basically, you know what I mean? Like, he's not just like he doesn't go on his like capitalist rant or something. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think there's some design similarities between Mr. Rossini and Spider. And part of that is the shaved head right there, but the fact that they
Yeah.
also have glasses. And the fact that he just feels like the generation prior's like political person, and now Spider is this generation's political person, kind of thing,
Yeah.
which could speak to some sort of Oedipal thing going on, or electric complex, I should say. Um,
Better not dig into that.
It's
but
also, again, Warren Ellis has his habit of providing us interesting uh, protagonists and slightly noble characters who love wearing white suits with white vests and white shoes.
also true.
Oh, we forgot to point this out that his glasses were destroyed and Shannon made a new
I said
set.
that.
Oh, I didn't
Oh
hear you
yeah,
say
no,
it.
he
Sorry.
did.
I
He
was
did.
totally waiting for you to say that. Damn it, I didn't hear you because I was gonna say. Remember, I told you that they sold the glasses as a pro or as like a thing. You can buy a copy on or a pair of them in the box for $360 right now on eBay.
Oh
And
man.
I was kind of
Mhm.
like, man, if I was more wealthy, I would totally get that and rock it on the last episode.
Yeah, I don't you think I haven't looked? Don't you?
Oh, there's got to be something on Etsy. Like,
Also true. There is.
nice.
So, so Yelena's dad asks Spider to make this house the base of operations now. He says that like, look, I don't care what kind of heat you draw on me. I would rather you guys be well equipped, and so I can keep tabs on my daughter because I don't want her to fucking die in this whole situation. But I believe in what you're doing, so I want to at the very least do what I can to help.
Yeah, just not be in a like flea bitten hotel, sharing a bed with two other people, and not eating. You know what I mean? Like he's like, just come home. Like shit.
So Spider says that he's going to do a bit of monstering on the president, and we've of course established monstering in that one shot issue where you harass the senator who is linked to the pornography situation. So just in case you're wondering what monstering is, it's harassing people in the worst of ways that a Gonzo journalist can do.
Yeah, just fucking with you.
But Spider's not well. He trips, and they note that the medication is something that he's getting used to. And when Yelena's dad urges him to rest, he says he doesn't have any time to rest,
Yeah.
which, fair. Then we cut to just such a fucking cynical scene. The president is in the disaster zone, and there's this little girl who says that her house went away, and he's like, I'm gonna fix it. And then they zoom in on a barcode on the back of her neck because she's a fucking plant.
This is the most the boys this book becomes.
It's a victim bot.
Like, yeah, this is some fucking Homelander shit. You know what I mean? Look, oh, isn't he great? You know, like he's taking care of this little girl, and I'm like, it's so clearly staged. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And Yelena says that it makes her so mad she wants to buy a gun, and Shannon's like, "You got a gun? One? I'm talking plural. I wish miniguns floating around me, controlled by murder thoughts."
I like that. I know a guy, you know a million guys. So I'm like, damn. There's some great banter in this page. Once again, another reference to her boobs, literally being able to concuss men,
Yeah.
which I thought was great.
And Spider has taken the opportunity of his illness to further harass his assistants. He says that Yelena has to carry him because he is sickly and weak.
The line for "I am weak and sickly" is amazing. I'm gonna say it again at some point. I already know it. Like anytime, like I'm gonna be sick in bed, and Amanda's like, "You need anything?" I'm like, "Can you get me soup?" For I am sick and weakly. Like, yeah, 100%.
We cut to a press conference with the Smiler, and we get a big splash page with no dialogue of just all the different journalists who have lined up. Yeah, so like this press corps being like conditioned just to laugh at the Smiler's jokes and everything makes me think of current political situations where the
Where?
where
Where
yeah
only where only certain
where only
organizations are
certain
allowed in press conferences.
yeah, exactly.
After they compliment the leader.
Yes, after they pay tribute. Fuck.
So they tee him up with a softball question about Vita Severn, and he gets to call in some sympathy points for that. Meanwhile, Spider and crew are in the cab on their way, and so they're listening to this press conference. And they arrive, and security at first is not going to let them in because they're not accredited journalists anymore. And this is actually like I think a slightly weird play by the Smiler, just because like Spider has done horrible things to him before at these kind of things. But the Smiler says it's okay. You got to let the little people in.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's isn't that, and we see that constantly right now. Again, there is such an arrogance, and it's not like there are people in power who could probably be doing more, but they're both so bad at hiding things and also like they just it's such an ego thing of I wanna look like the nice guy. I wanna look like the bigger person. I wanna look like the even though I know you're probably gonna call out on me, like there are journalists who technically could have been told not to be on Air Force One anymore. And they still come on, they'll still ask real questions. He'll call them stupid. And it's just like it's weird of like, but you still let them on and everything. It's like, but he keeps hoping like, but this next time it'll be right, and I'll look like the better person. Like I feel like there actually is a childishness in certain people in power that they never let go of because it's still and you see that all the time with just certain the schemes they do, whether they're putting their names on buildings that they had nothing to do with or something. It's like it's ego and it's like, well, maybe if I do this, dad will finally like me and think I'm cool. Elon Musk, every time he's at a freaking interview, is so desperate to be the funny guy. He so desperately wants you to think he's funny and witty. It fails every time. And he's never had the thing to be like, well, I've not been funny and this has not been my crowd. I should not make another try for a joke right now. He's gonna do it again. So like it's the Smiler does seem more intelligent than some of our real life people, unfortunately, which is part of why he's a good villain. But I'm fine with like fascists and government, corruption and stuff. Like there's part of the arrogance you need to get there and to pursue that agenda also means that there is a childish arrogance that is a flaw in you. And just like, yeah, I'm going to let Spider into the room because I feel reasonably safe right now.
Yeah.
And then Spider does a weird thing for what we get in the next issue, which is he throws a bunch of discs out to all the journalists with depositions from people indicating that Alan Schacht is related to the killing of Vita Severn.
Yeah, which I was like, holy shit, this is a game changer. And then it's kind of like, is it when we get to the end of this? And now I'm kind of like, I'm confused how this works.
Right.
Like, did the discs just give you access to the information somewhere else? I know it's like a weird reference, but like Scout Comics sold these like credit card looking things and you could scan them and read a comic book, which was really cool. I loved those. But is it like that? And then if it
I
goes down
mean,
there, you can't get it?
I sort of took it, and I agree, it's weird. Like I sort of took it as it's it's specifically just the evidence he's talking about there, and
Yeah.
then corroborating evidence is elsewhere on servers and stuff like that, which again to
I
me is sort
agree
of
with
like
that
a
being the headcanon, but I
Yeah.
still have
right.
a question that we will get to when we get to the
Yeah.
Okay,
next
cool.
issue.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm just taking it as again like a slight a misunderstanding of like what like CD burning was a new thing at the time when this issue came out, and we all had to deal with the fact of like I had to deal with if I was ripping some audiobooks or something like, oh, but this thing is like 80 minutes and the CD will only let me burn 70 minutes onto it, like, so I guess I got to divide into like I think there's a limitation of the
Right.
expectations, which is weird to me because you also are in this world where I mean, it's a little bit like Star Wars, like in the classic trilogy. Like you have this world where people were able to imagine we made ships that have their own gravity and travel beyond light speed, but no one in the 70s in Star Wars considered email. Like you had to physically carry the plans to R2, who had to physically carry the plans to
Right.
Obi-Wan and stuff like that. And so I sort of just see it again as like a similar thing here. Like we're not thinking of just how much a data disk in this world of other advanced technology could probably hold. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
know.
sure that the information on this disc is just like a sampling of the stuff that he's been collecting. That these are party favors for the other journalists that lead the whole situation here, because he's coming to do a big show of things, and he says in this issue that he's not that he's sparring
Th-
right now, but he's
This
not.
isn't the kill shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, it's just weird what we'll get to in the next issue. Meanwhile, they also turn on the blur suits for the people who are in the audience, which are all Secret Service people.
That was great.
Yeah,
That's a power ass move, and I loved it.
yeah, Yelena with her Commodore 64, and everyone's freaked out about this. The one thing I wish is that we had a better wide shot before the blur suits are activated, so we could see the difference.
Yeah, that would have been good actually.
But as it is, Spider sort of gives a bunch of his theories about what's going on. It's really fun seeing Shannon like light his cigarette as he's so weak and sickly. Uh,
I am weakly and sick. Yeah. Um, no, I think that was really cool, and I really love the shot of the rest of the crowd now looking around. This crowd that was just like uproariously laughing at everything the president says. They're like, "Ugh, I don't like this now." I love that Spider can just destroy a situation like that. It's so good.
yeah. But the Smiler like fires back. He even curses at him, and when his handlers are like live mic, he's like it doesn't fucking matter, which is true. Presidents when they swear gain popularity, as we have seen even with current ones.
Yeah.
Uh, so they go back and forth about it, and this is the spot. Okay, so everyone fucking knows about Spider's diagnosis, and
Yeah.
I don't know how that story got out.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
yeah, it is strange. If it's on a database anywhere, I guess they'd have access to it. Also, the doctor is not a fan of his.
I
So,
but I don't feel like just the way they had her vibe, I don't see her as just immediately
yeah.
telling people. I could see more that Callahan had someone hack into once they found out Spider was alive or like had been there, whatever, like hack into some medical
Yeah.
record or see something. But then I don't know where that medical, if she made backup medical records elsewhere as a doctor would be want to do, okay.
Yeah.
But then I would expect more of a reaction from Spider regarding the idea that he knows this news.
Right, and there's not that big of a time jump, so I just feel like we're missing a little bit of a story, like half an issue's worth of just like that information kind of getting out, um, and Spider responding to the fact that people now know that he's sick. Um, that it's just a weird part there. Like once this issue establishes that everyone knows, it's fine. It's just weird that everyone knows, and there isn't more attention drawn to that part.
Yeah, exactly. Because that would be a big revelation. He's a
Like
big figure.
yeah, it's because it's not even just that like oh he has a degenerative brain disease. It's like specifically from eye pollen. Like it's just a lot of information that's the Smiler just like spouts out, and the mayor spouts off. You know, like that everyone seems to be aware of it. But anyway, so they trade some barbs, and basically Spider threatens him and says, "The next time I see you will be the last time I see you." And the Smiler goes, "On your latter point, Mr. Jerusalem, I agree completely." And that's where we kind of conclude the issue. Which what
And
is it?
and
What is that look that Spider's giving?
I don't know. The fact that there's just this white background for like half of these pages, I'm kind of, and the fact he's like delusional, I'm like, is this happening? Or is this in his head? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Did he go out there and basically say, I'm taking you down and then run through everything in his own head? I was like, that could have happened for all I know. But yeah, that's a weird face. It's almost as weird as the face of the smiley face down in the corner. So yeah.
yeah, I mean he has a great point where he brings up on the page before, like you get the impression of being in control, but you yourself have been losing your mind ever since certain decisions. And again, that's something that we do see in certain arrogant political leaders. I mean, how long after a joke was made did like we hear about like actually my hands are really big, um, and it was
So big.
crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Or like
Yeah.
it's like but that guy got the peace prize. I should have the peace prize. That's still being talked about. What do you do? It's this crazy thing. So I dug that stuff, but yeah, it's an interesting confrontation because it's also like you're obviously he wants to keep some level of deniability, the Smiler, and he wants to keep some level of a public record of like, well, everything else is conjecture, but if you just look at like this, like I was actually a very cool guy, and I was actually like da 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 da. But you also have shown us like, but he's willing to have CIA, Secret Service in a crowd of journalists with blur suits just in case. So it seems weird to me to threaten him quite like this in this fashion. And yeah, the last panel, like, is Spider trying to grin like a maniac, like come and get me? Is he actually in pain all of a sudden and thinking, oh shit, I might not get out of this?
Yeah.
I don't know. It is an odd ending The press conference in general is an odd thing to me
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, 100%. I,
Um,
I will point out before we move on to the next issue, though, this is something me and Case have kind of been keeping an eye on. Now, I know cover dates aren't publication dates,
Right.
but by cover date, 9/11 happens between these two issues.
Yeah, it is. It is not yet.
Yeah, but so we're the like again, I don't know the exact publishing date because it's hard to find publishing dates.
It would be for the way that this was done at the time, and DC was in Marvel had been pretty consistent since the
About
80s,
three
like for the
months.
most part. Like it's going to be 3 months. So
Yeah.
this was, I think I actually saw that confirmed one time in a publication. Like this is like June,
Yeah.
um, June or July.
Okay. Yeah, but just because we were kind of keeping an eye on that, we were talking about
Sure.
pre 9/11 and post 9/11.
right.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
it's coming up, and it's very interesting. It's kind of curious how shortly after this the book series ended. Like it seemed planned, but I'm not sorry to say anything, but that's just interesting to me. So
Yeah, we'll be tracking for when we can feel the vibe shift. But like there's
yeah,
also the knock-on effect of just how long it takes between like to write and put out the work.
yeah,
Um, beyond just the publishing part. But thank you for keeping track of that one, Keith.
yeah.
So the next issue picks up with Spider at the Rossini compound and just kind of walking around nature and taking it in. Um, and Shannon comes out and they talk for a little bit. And it's a nice interaction. Spider, equates the degenerative disease to be like dying because it's all the things that bring purpose to his life going away. Um, and we get some nice moments with Shannon just sitting with him, and they sort of reflect on the last 4 years.
And one thing we talked about, you specifically bring up, is the time frame has always been like, how long has she been with him? Like, especially when Yelena joined, you're like, it's been 2 weeks. We get confirmation she's been with him for 4 years.
Right.
So that's super interesting. That means the Smiler has got to be like 2 years into his term.
I think
Like,
that matches up. They're
yeah.
very good about they call it year one, year two, year three, year four.
Yeah, I saw the cover for the next one. It says year 5. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
So they've been pretty consistent on that front. It was just like the timeline for the events of the assistants,
Yeah.
but I think the broad timeline is supposed to be fairly one to one.
Yeah.
It's just like how much happens between issues is different from at various points in the series.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just really interesting, like, to keep track of that because, like, 4 years, man. Like, and so a good chunk of that was after, they got booted from the word. So they were probably on the streets longer than I would imagine. Like, I was imagining like a week, you know what I mean? But like, obviously, it's longer than that. So,
Right. Yeah, they've been living at various hotels they talk about and having stretches where they couldn't go out and get food or things like that.
yeah.
So Spider goes inside and notes that he is feeling old and cold and wearing out. And so he has the maker produce like a full set of clothes. So he covers him up with a turtleneck and with a jacket. And Yelena comes in, and this is a different kind of interaction. Like I said, her relationship with Spider is different than Shannon's relationship with Spider, and I like that we sort of like flesh out how each of them respond to their mentor failing the way that he is.
Yeah. Obviously, saying a bit about the relationship. Um, Yelena, again, not having that hard edge that we've been seeing, like maybe part of it, she's home, you know what I mean? She's not on the streets. She's not living this life she was living. Now she's back home. She's comfortable, but she brought this hard life back with her and probably doesn't know how to really react to that.
There's also like parts of this here because it's still the tail end of the '90s, and also because I equate some of the what happened in Dirge with events like Stonewall in terms of like a manipulation of police presence and such. Like this also feels like I saw so many scenes of this kind of conversation in so much media in the '90s, and a lot of the queer community saw this because of like AIDS was still such a major factor plaguing things, and like there had been some advances. We were starting to get to a point where people could start living with AIDS and living with HIV. Um, but just his sentence of, I feel cold. We just saw outside, like we saw how everyone's dressed. Like it doesn't look like necessarily that cold, especially if they're inside right now. But like I feel cold is like such a thing of like my body is doing it's not doing something for me anymore.
Yeah.
Things are whether it's cancer, whether it's AIDS related illness, whether it's any number of things, and but I think it also, like I said, like I equate some of this story with the Stonewall Inn because like just not to give a huge history lesson, but I mean that was such a safe haven to a degree for the queer community back in New York and Greenwich Village, and it was mafia run, and they didn't have a liquor license, so they just paid the cops on a regular basis, and they it was the only at the time gay bar in New York where men were allowed to dance together, and it sort of existed within the ecosystem where it there was lots of feeling against gay people, but you also had writers like William S. Burroughs or Allen Ginsberg like living in the village and talking about like this is just a community, let them live. And but then two New York mayors, Robert Wagner, and who wanted a family image of New York before the 1964 World's Fair, and then Mayor John Lindsay actually pulled back some police action against the gay community, but then doubled down on his reelection campaign, and eventually that led to the Stonewall Inn riots and attacks, the raid where the mafia and the owners of the bar, like and the people who ran the bar, the management, were always alerted when there was going to be a raid. Like the police had to do raids because they there was a one that was their deal, um, and two they needed to be seen to be doing something for people who were saying like, but what about gay bars? And so
Right.
they would do these raids, but they did them on weeknights and they did them earlier in the evening. So that's not your later night crowd when it's going to be more crowded. They would only take liquor out of off like the bar itself. They wouldn't go into the cabinets underneath where the extra liquor was stored. And that way the bar could continue operation after they left. And so there were these deals of like we got to do this, but also we're giving you some leeway, and we're only going to arrest like certain people or like an overt drag queen or something like, which is not great. Still, I'm not defending any of that, but there was an ecosystem that they had. And then what happened on that night that the Stonewall raid happened was that they didn't uh, alert the mafia. They didn't alert the people running the bar. They also didn't tell it was cops from other precincts. It was not the cops from the local sixth precinct, which is
Hmm.
local to Stonewall. And that brings to mind me, our cop that Spider talks to, who is aware that there's been pressure on a blue flu, but she herself, despite being part of the system, is not aware of what it's trying to do or that her community is in danger right now. Like she's also kept in the dark. The sixth precinct was kept in the dark, and they also attacked like on a weekend. They attacked on a Friday night, late into the night. There were 200 people there. So like
Yeah.
that one night, they arranged all these things of like this one night is going to be an example. This
Yeah.
one night we're going to do this, and we're not going to let cops who might know friends there. We're not going to tell them, and we're not going to tell these other people. And it just there's a kind of like mimicry here that as we get more details about what was the real reason behind the blue flu and the superstorm and everything like that I find interesting, and to me like I said like that just coupled nicely with Spider being someone who is aware. I despite being essentially a young man, I imagine he's in his 40s, um like I now have a clock ticking, and I can't stop it, and all I can do is be comfortable.
So we get one more like kind of warm scene with him sitting outside with the cat and saying that the cat's going to be taken care of, which is just kind of just a nice moment with cats. And then Spider gets alerted that that there's a story on the news, and this is the thing that is really weird, or rather, really antiquated in terms of how it views stuff,
Yeah.
which is that it turns out that all of the print district and basically all journalism in general had their files on servers in the print district. And so that when the storm happened and the sniper and everything and the print district was evacuated, a team went in there and wiped out everything, which includes all the evidence that Spider had amassed. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, first of all, just like basic rule of backups, motherfucker, backups, like seems to be a huge thing. And the idea of like cloud computing and so forth just is nowhere
Yeah.
near the realm here. Just like I said, this is 20th century speculative fiction, not 21st century speculative fiction. Um, it,
Yeah.
it, it just cannot conceive of the way the technology would work. And it needs it to exist this way to be the speed bump that it is. Um, so it's reliant on these older things, at least for the purpose, like at least to be the MacGuffin.
Oh yeah, and we didn't have an idea about the cloud yet in like if you also take like how long it would have been scripted beforehand, and that it usually takes any comic book artist on the average like 3 to 4 months to like illustrate it, get the edited spec, get the lettering in, da da da. Like yeah, the cloud wasn't on our perspective. Um, I totally agree though. Like even back then, it's like people like you had multiple floppy disks of important documents, and the idea that there wasn't a backup. Like the only I give it a slight conceit that at least in my mind, it's not just Spider's evidence, but like the evidence that corroborates he didn't make up his evidence. Because
Right.
they do talk about like it shows staff positions, it shows like
Yeah.
staff whereabouts, it shows like data trails of who entered what files when and who might have edited or not edited. I'm like, that is a lot of like good corroborating data to show that you didn't just sit at a computer and make up the witness statements you have or anything like that. Like that's but again, yeah, like why isn't there a backup server in whatever the city's equivalent of New Jersey is? Like why isn't there some like server farm on a mountain? Um so it's and it also like I think even in 2000 2001, even if you've written this in 1998, I would think a better solution if you want to go this route is that they introduced a virus through that server and
Yeah.
then it affected the
Right.
other servers in like the news network or something. The fact
Yeah.
that you have it seems like a physical heist is it feels dated even for the time, very oddly.
I mean, in this world, we have people who are turned into clouds.
People become
Yeah.
clouds
like,
and
like
then they
why can't
found a
data?
way
There
they
is
found
cloud computing in this world. It just means something very different.
they found ways to have clouds have sex. Like they figured that out. They sat down
They
and
figured
said,
that shit
"We
out first.
Yeah, they're like, we will solve this issue before we do anything else cloud related.
But
Oh, I'm
anyways,
gonna
yeah,
cumulus.
yeah. Oh, boo,
No,
boo.
oh,
I was gonna say it gives
we
another
want to
name to the.
remind the audience that Case is a father, so
I was gonna
he's
say
allowed to make dad jokes.
it's another meaning to I'm on the cloud. That was my joke that I
Yeah,
was gonna
yeah, yeah.
make. And yeah, I love that it's Robert McX. Just keep bringing this guy back,
Yeah.
and how he's like a true neutral party. Like he doesn't have a side except journalism. You know what I mean? Like, and I love that.
Yeah.
So, like, he's one of the he's except for Spider and his team, is he the best journalist in the story? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah,
kind of
without a
interesting.
doubt.
That's really interesting.
Now
Yeah.
he's also one of the few that we actually see consistently.
True.
There's other reporters, but like
Yeah.
what was the guy that like that Spider like kicked the shit out of when he like came up and was like, "How does it feel to be an opinion columnist and not a real journalist like me?"
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, all the citizen journalism,
yeah,
which is my two least favorite words in the English language, by the way. But we won't get into that today.
but Spider says, "I mean it. No more shots, no more playing, no more whittling away at the fucker. We build the entire case and we shove it through his fucking heart in one go," which just sort of speaks to how weird the previous issue is.
Yeah, because it's like he kind of laid out his plan, and then
Right.
it's kind of like, we're not gonna do that shit anymore. I'm like, you just did it.
And
Like,
also, this picks up like this issue basically works fine picking up from if you took out the previous issue completely, like this
yeah,
issue would pick up just fine. Makes that previous one feel like a weird bottle issue that it already has some weird continuity stuff just by
yeah,
virtue of the timeline and things.
and
So
everybody knowing and all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
but then we get some other news, and they do a big old splash page of a car accident. And they reveal that President Callahan's wife and children have died in this car accident.
it's a heartbreaking shot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we ever physically see her.
No.
Like, they keep referring to her, and obviously Spider went to see her.
Oh wait, no, wait. Hang on. Was there's an interview where he says that at least I wish that he had the good sense to lie to me or something to that effect.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
there's a
yeah,
video
that's right.
interview.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
there's a
remember
video
that now.
interview with
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're never like sort of in scene with her. We're never present with her, so we never like she like because it's a video interview and the nature of that, like it does come off as evidence as opposed to like we don't have like Spider's monologue as he enters the room and sees her and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
yeah, there is a disconnect from her still.
Or maybe that interview pops up later. I forget exactly.
I remember now that it happened already. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But anyway, so we see Spider is actually kind of devastated by this. Like he was ready to bounce back uh at just that the evidence is lost, and then like, okay, well, we'll rebuild our case.
Yeah.
But this is one where he knows that she's dead in part because of him.
Which isn't the first time we've talked about that.
Right.
Like just the last volume when Yelena asked how many people have you killed, we were discussing like, is he counting Vita? You know what I mean? Like, because there's like, he's like, they're all in self defense except one, right? And I'm like, is he counting Vita? Because it's like his actions caused her death. And I mean, he's obviously taking this on, you know what I mean? It's taken on his shoulders. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So we discuss how the Smiler probably had her killed because he needs an approval rating, and this gives him sympathy, and it's the same exact playbook as Vita.
Yeah, which is sloppy. Like if you're gonna be a mastermind, pulling the same heist twice is kind of stupid. Um, but I honestly think the Smiler at this point is so drunk in his own power he doesn't think he can be caught. And if he is caught, he can talk his way out of it, not to reflect on certain current events. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which again is it's that insane arrogance we see where it's like there's so many things like you could have made this not a thing. You could have done this, you could have done this. Like you could have just shut up. And just like, oh, he was a bad this other country had a bad person in charge and we did this for the good of people. Like just like five other people say that and then they ask you like, so we're there like, yeah, I want oil. And it's just like it's just this arrogance of like, well, I'm in charge, so like you can't, therefore it can't be that bad. And like I'm here for a reason. I'm CEO of America. So, yeah, it's that I mean this and the last issue, it feels to me like maybe there was too much of a push for we got to wrap things up now. And I don't know what the other solution would have been. Would we have wanted an extra 6 issue storyline of the Smiler, like doing something else first before he takes this drastic step? Would we have wanted um, Spider to be in hiding for a month or two and not have that press conference? Like I don't know. It's a very odd thing for a series that's taken its time with a lot of other things. Um, but on the other hand, like there is a breakneck speed that happens with some of the events because I mean it's like his relationship with Shannon, like like just a person, then assistant, then she's pissed at him and she's gone, and then later she's back. Like all when you're reading it in a row, as opposed to having a month in between each chapter, can feel very sudden
Yeah.
and wild. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I think that the previous issue is just an issue I just don't like very much.
Yeah.
I think it's just a little sloppy, but that's fine. Like from the standpoint of like writing a monthly book like this and then realizing like, oh, I went too far in one issue and I'm going to pull it back a little bit in the next one isn't the end of the world. It's
Yeah,
just we're really observing it because we're reading the series in such a condensed timeline.
yeah, yeah.
I do want to call out that when they show close-ups of the car accident, we see footprints in the oil, mud, something, gasoline, something that is mixed with blood. Um, and I think the clear implication is that there was a person who either walked into the situation and made sure everyone was dead, or was there and walked away from the situation after causing the accident.
Maybe in one of those suits.
Yes, I
Like
certainly
in the back seat, shot her in the back of the head.
right.
Like something like that. Yeah.
But we cut to Spider upside down, and this is a really like dramatic shot here, saying, "I'm going to make the grinning bastard suffer."
This feels like an iconic shot, like one of those ones that there's probably posters of. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So yeah, really, it's my favorite volume so far, definitely. Um, especially the first three issues. It's just such a dramatic, well told thing. It didn't have too much of the ha ha because we're past that point. You know what I mean? We're in the shit now. And then just the reveal of what's going on with him. I think it was a really well balanced volume between the 6 pages. Except for again, you said that one that felt a little off, but it wasn't detrimental. It just felt supplemental. You know what I mean?
Right?
It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't need this. Like, like that's the kind of thing. But other than that, I mean, I really, really liked this one. It's great.
Yeah, and just that it's great when you can trust the audience to be okay with um we're gonna hold off on like boob jokes for a while and just like or even like biting colorful commentary on satire just to like really get into okay, what are some consequences of what's happened before? What are the stakes? And let's now have it. We now have for the first time really a ticking clock. The second time because the first time was the election, but now it's a ticking clock that's on a personal level for one of our characters,
Yeah.
and it's good to just trust that it's okay to be in that serious mode for a while. That you built up a good relationship with each other, and that this serves the story. Whereas, like a lot of frankly storytellers these days and filmmakers, and it's not always their fault. It's also just as often like the studio execs who are afraid that people will get too down or something, and so you're asked to like after each tragedy, please do a quick zinger, just remind people like, but we're here to have fun, folks, or something. Like the Marvel films have been criticized for that more in the past few years of like and certain like some of their TV stuff, the streaming stuff, like terrible things will happen and then the characters who are literally living it and might have just lost a friend might give a zinger because you need to end the scene with a zinger, and
Yeah.
I just love that this story isn't doing that. Like we will get to the dick jokes again, we will get to like something hilarious and biting, but right now we just want to remind you like, oh, there are things happening in these characters lives that they wouldn't be able to laugh at, and there are stakes that have to be real or else this isn't a drama with great comedy. This is just a sitcom, and I think that's great.
So yeah, this is a volume where shit gets real and the stakes are really cleanly laid out. Like we have that ticking clock that we said Spider has 1 year left to go, and uh we know that Smiler is not above murder in any way, shape, or form, and is cleaning house on a lot of things. Um and we see just the amount of devastation that can happen at the Smiler's hands, and what he's willing to do to a people that are just collateral damage.
Yeah.
So if the previous volume was us sort of setting the new status quo now that Spider's on the run, and we need to sort of like feel out this world, now this is the like, okay, we are in the final act motherfuckers phase of this.
Yeah. Like there's a ticking time bomb in Spider. Things have escalated. It's a big swing. You know, you got to take a big swing at this point. That's where we're at. So, yeah. It's built really well. The second half of this series has built incredibly well, I will say. Like, yeah.
So let's check in on how we're doing with Mr. Lettinen, who hasn't read this series before. Any theories going on? Any speculation you want to do?
I am worried that we're going to lose at least one character that we know. I'm terrified for Yelena's dad. I will just say that. He seems like a good guy. He's literally taking Spider into his home. That's the kind of twist that would harden Yelena for good and make her Spider, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I don't know what to think about Royce. He just didn't appear this entire thing just on the phone. So I don't know. I don't I think we're going to get the classic cyberpunk. as good of a happy ending as you could possibly get in this situation, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all going to be okay. Like, but I mean, it'll be better, I guess is the best way to put it. But specific theories, I have 100. Like, so I can't run them down. I don't think that Spider is going to be one of the 2%. That's what I'll say. I don't think this story has that tone where he miraculously recovers. It just doesn't feel like it. So,
You don't think someone could tell him like, but look, this guy Khan has super blood, and and if we just put it in you, despite not checking your blood type, it'll be okay. Like, and then you can just go run and be awesome.
we're just gonna pivot to Star Trek for the last 10 minutes. Like, no. Um,
That's always that I always find that fun with like these types of stories of like deciding what is our level of science fiction. Like
right?
people can become clouds, but um, we can't automatically fix degenerative diseases or
Yeah.
brain diseases, and I like that. I honestly I really like that because it's there has to be again some state of risk.
Stakes.
There has to be some
Stakes.
stakes.
Yep.
It makes more sense to me of like you can copy a working brain and figure out something that's emulating that than well if the hardware is damaged we can't copy damaged hardware like it's been damaged the thing is there and we don't really know how A and B fit together.
It's a
um,
corrupted file.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's the
already a
code.
corrupted file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this it isn't like oh like something's happening like we'll there are preventative measures we can take like no this
Yeah.
happened to you, it's been happening for a while, and this is the deal. um
I refer
yeah.
to the newsroom way too often on this show because it's my favorite show and it's about journalism.
Mm.
But like when they had the guy on from the environmental agency and it was played by Toby from The
Yeah,
Office.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember the line like he's like Will says, "How do we fix this?" He goes, "Turn the car off 20 years ago." And that's kind of what this feels like. Is like, how do you fix it? You don't do this like to begin
Yeah.
with. Like it's done. It's over with. So yeah.
And that, folks, is why Keith is calling for revolution. We just have to take down the government now. The system's done. We can't fix it
Hey,
anymore. Like
you know what?
we're going down.
By time this comes out, who knows? Like like we might be in a Mad Max wasteland by the time this shit comes out.
Remember
For
the
real.
80s when we really did believe we could build a city on rock and roll. Like, oh the 80s.
Uh, yeah. Oh man. I keep thinking about this phrasing about Putin's Russia, where it's like you just keep checking in and being like, you can't like if only we had done something then, and it keeps shifting. And it's like, oh, I could have done something then, and then 5 years later, oh, 5 years ago I could have done something then.
Yeah.
Uh, it,
If if only we hadn't decided that cable is not TV and therefore doesn't need all the same rules as TV, and so you can't just call yourself a news network because at some point you talk about the news. If only, or if hell, like even beyond that, if only we had done more like what Britain did, where like okay, we have TV and people will have shows and will use commercials to pay for that airtime, but news publicly funded.
Yep.
Don't worry about advertising. Publicly funded. We deserve news.
Yeah,
If only
you shouldn't be motivated by ratings.
if America had had a BBC equivalent, wow. Just yeah. Because yeah, there's and that's the thing that I think is part of the frustration that we all relate to with Spider, despite there are these anachronisms and like why don't they have the cloud? Why don't they have extra backups?
Yeah.
Why would anyone be bothered about reruns? Apparently human beings love reruns. Um it's there is that timeless frustration of I have influence, but not as much as I think could change the world. Like, so I need other people to listen. What if other people don't listen? What if the system is just the system? Even if I put someone slightly better in office or convince people that the beast is better than the smiler, but he's still the beast. And that frustration of like, do we actually get to move the needle? Is this really the best of all possible worlds? Did we screw ourselves too much in the past? Like that frustration is so universal. It's even if we have a great like social revolution in the next 10 years, and we figure out a lot of things, even if like 40 years, 50 years from now, we have like something that looks like it could one day become the Star Trek version of tomorrow. Like there's going to be things that just make us frustrated and think, did we are we just stuck here because we didn't do enough 50 years ago? Or even on a personal level, like, am I just stuck here because I didn't take that job after college, I took this job, or I thought that I had to do this. And it's on one hand it sucks that that's a universal frustration, but it is a human frustration. I think that's one of the things that keeps this book alive.
Yeah, yeah. Man, it's a wild arc and it's a wild series.
Yeah, it's heavy, man.
Yeah. So Alan, we asked this of all of our guests. Now that you've done the reread to be on the show, are you going to finish up the series?
Oh, I already did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like again, because like it just you get into it and you get into this vibe, and it's like, yeah, man, I gotta take this train to the station now. I gotta get back into it. And it is still a satisfying ending to me, which is all I'll say, obviously, for those who need to find it for themselves. Um, and again, it's such a what a winning duo of artistic storytelling. Just two people who figured out how each other works and delivered this great collaboration together. Like just it's I can't imagine there are other series and other comics where I sometimes think like, I wonder if like if this guy had drawn it or that person had drawn it, like that might have been better or that action scene might have been cooler to me,
Yeah.
to my personal preference. I can't imagine anyone else doing Transmetropolitan
Yeah.
than Darick Robertson. Just
Mhm.
Yeah.
dynamite every damn page.
It's like Saga. It's
Yeah,
like no one but Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples can make Saga. That's
yeah,
just how it is.
like that is the
Yeah.
story. Like it's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like at that point, like the artist really is like for television equivalent, the cast and the lighting director. It's just like
Yeah.
even if even if you like certain other people, like, but this is the person who had to be there. Like it had to be Ted Danson on Cheers. It had to be, even if other people could have played Sam Malone, like, but it wouldn't have been Ted Danson.
Yeah.
Like, it's gotta be Ted.
Funny you mentioned that. I'll throw in one quick thing about Saga. Fiona Staples is listed first. Like
Mm,
if you ever look at an issue of Saga, she's above Brian K. Vaughan.
that's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's a
So
very good point. That's
I've
interesting.
I've always loved that.
Yeah.
As someone who reads credits of 40 credits of comics every single week, that's the only one I ever see that on. So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's off topic.
No, no, but it's part of the point, which is that
Mhm.
the art is so important to this all. And you know we've
Yeah.
called out like Rodney Ramos as the anchor, who gets a huge amount of credit in this
Oh,
series. But
tremendous.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just this is just a truly great creator-owned work.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we didn't shout out the JG Jones's covers, which
Oh, that's
this
true.
time,
Yeah, we did.
which
Yeah.
are so good.
Oh, and
Like
John
JG Jones.
Cassaday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
the insane guest star or guest write or guest stars, yeah, and using our metaphor, that he gets for covers is just obscene.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, great covers. Yeah, we do normally shout those out as we go, and we omitted that in this.
I mean, we were drawn into the story.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
And that's absolutely true because again, like Darick Robertson, like I've other work that he's drawn that's been handled by some different inkers. Like I do think some of that wouldn't have served Transmetropolitan. I think
yeah,
some of those other inkers would have given it the wrong atmosphere or the wrong vibe, or would have Darick does such detail oriented work, but if you have certain types of inkers that almost gets overwhelming, it's almost too much detail or it gets too dark and almost little it almost muddies the page. So yeah, shout out to the whole team here. Like
yeah.
just an amazing collaboration.
It really is.
yeah,
Um, but on that note, Alan, thank you for coming on and collaborating with us on the
Sure.
show.
Sure.
It's always awesome having you on. It's great chatting with you. As we have noted, we've been friends since high school, so it's great catching up. And yeah, where can people find you and follow you? What have you got going on?
I don't have too much going on now, but I will say, as I'm delving back into fiction, um, I've got a short story coming out in a couple of months this spring. I don't know the exact date, but it'll be this spring. of 2026. It's in a book anthology called The Villains Club, which is going to be published by Divine Feminine Publishing. They have another great book out, written by a dear friend of mine, Dr. Janina Scarlett, called Through Bullets and Thunderstorms, and is historical fiction uh, about a Ukrainian's experience during the Holocaust, um, inspired in part by her own family history and other things. It's a great book. But yeah, Divine Feminine Publishing is publishing this anthology called The Villains Club, which is um, all family friendly, like PG 13-ish stories that are each usually tongue in cheek, telling a story from a villain's perspective, and or about a villain's experience, or just some sympathetic or satirical look at villains of science fiction, fantasy, comic book genres, original characters who are analogs to things that you all know and love. So yeah, I have a short story there with a character who is suspiciously similar to Lex Luthor, and their deal, and certain frustrations that hopefully we relate to. Uh, so yeah, Villains Club. You can check out Divine Feminine Publishing website to see updates for that, or follow them on the social things like Instagram and all. And beyond that, I'm just collaborating on a couple other little projects, a couple other short stories I'm putting out there. I'm collaborating on a movie script, which event we'll see if it ever sees the light of day, but it's just fun putting it out there, talking to some people about it, and yeah, that's sort of the majority of things right now.
We should also shout out that you are my editor for two of the video series that I do. One is the Superman analog video series,
Hmm.
and then the other is the clips that we put out for Another Pass and Men of Steel.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and
Uh,
which always like bring like great insights into like movie storytelling and comics, and the many ripple effects of a character like Superman has in inspiring other characters to be either similar to him or very different to him, like in a response. Like yeah,
yeah, so just want to shout you out on that one because appreciate the work you do. Uh,
sure.
Sorry, Keith, you looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, no, 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 no.
uh, yeah, so again, thank you for coming on, Alan. Keith, where can people find you and follow you?
Yes, I am the host of Certain PV comic book show We Have Issues, which is a weekly comic book review show where I try to review every single comic that comes out and bust my bank in the process. I recently had to catch up on 5 weeks of comics, and the number almost approached 4 digits. So that was ridiculous. But make sure to check that out. The best place to find it is at We Have Issues on Blue Sky. So we have issues.bsky.social. You can find my account at keithhasissues.bsky.social. That's my personal account. Hopefully, I'll start using it more. I keep saying that. I haven't. But also make sure to check out the Instagram because I'm starting to pivot to Instagram because that's where all the comic creators are. And I hate it. But on there, We Have Issues Pod because someone took my name. The only other place really to find me that you would find me on a regular basis would be our Discord, which I think Case is going to about to tell you about.
Yeah, the Discord is a great place to come interact with us. So the Discord can be found at our website, certainpov.com, or in the link in the show notes. It's a great server, lots of fun, nerdy conversations going on, but not so much that you can't keep track of the conversations that you were having, which is a problem on some servers I've been on. So
Yeah.
it's a good place with a chill vibe. Really appreciate that. If you don't want to use the Discord to contact me, you can reach out to me on most social media platforms at Case Aiken, with the exception of Instagram, where I'm holding on for dear life to my AIM screen name from high school, which is Quetzalcoatl 5. Because as you can guess, based on the fact that I was obsessed with Transmetropolitan in high school, I was pretty pretentious back then. So check that out. You can also support this show if you go to Patreon, patreon.com/certainpov media. You can support everything that we are doing. And on that note, we have some people to thank. I'm going to thank all the people who joined at the executive producer level, and that is Micah McCaw, Carter Hallett, Sean Muir, Lee Greger, Memento Young, Logan Crowley, Joe Mastropiero, Casey and Nancy Aiken, Adam Samter, and Keith Lettinen.
That's me.
If you want to be an awesome person and support this and all the other things that we're doing here on the YouTube channel for Certain POV Media, or just as part of the Certain POV network, go to Patreon and check it out. But even if you don't have money to support, sign up at the free tier. I put out essays every week about various nerd topics, a lot of D&D stuff, but just nerd topics in general. So that's a great place to go, and those are available at the free tier. But otherwise, yeah, you should check out certainpov.com, where there's tons of great shows like We Have Issues, and circle back here for the next episode, and until then, this has been The Word from Tomorrow. Have a great week.